I remember that morning like it just happened. The coffee had gone cold, sitting on the table, untouched. My hands were shaking, not from the chill, but from the kind of fear that eats you from the inside. You see, I had spent 30 years saving. Pennies, dollars, little bits from every paycheck. I skipped new dresses. I walked instead of taking the bus. All so my grandson, Malik, could have a future brighter than mine. He was my joy, my second chance at motherhood. When his mama passed, I promised her I'd raise him right. And I did everything I could, every little thing. That morning, the phone rang. It was the bank. The woman on the line had a soft voice, too soft, the kind people use when they're about to tell you something terrible. She said, "Mrs. Jackson, your account's been emptied." I didn't understand at first. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe a glitch, a wrong number, something that could be fixed. But no. The account I'd built for Malik. Every cent I'd saved for his college. His dreams gone. I hung up and just sat there. The clock kept ticking, slow and cruel. And that's when my heart whispered the truth I didn't want to believe. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a thief on the street. It was him, my own flesh and blood. Malik. I stared at his picture on the wall, him smiling at his high school graduation, cap tilted, full of promise. And I wondered, where did that sweet boy go? When did his eyes turn cold enough to do this to me? The house was quiet, too quiet. And for the first time in my life, I wished it wasn't. Because silence has a way of talking, and that morning, it told me everything I didn't want to hear. 2 days passed before I saw him again. 2 long, heavy days. I didn't sleep much, just sat in that kitchen, staring at the empty chair where he used to eat breakfast. When he finally walked through the door, I almost didn't recognize him. The boy who once smelled like soap and fresh laundry, now smelled of smoke and regret. His eyes, they wouldn't meet mine. That's when I knew. I didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't even ask why at first. I just said his name, soft and trembling. Malik. He froze. Then, like he was reading from a bad script, he said, "Grandma, I was gonna tell you." I laughed. A sound I didn't even recognize came out of me, half pain, half disbelief. "Tell me what, baby?" I said. "That you took everything I've worked for? Every bit of hope I ever had for you?" He started talking fast excuses, reasons, nonsense. He said he just wanted to flip the money, make it grow. Said a friend had a plan, a deal, a sure thing, a sure thing. Those words still ring in my ears. There's never been a sure thing in my life. Not once. When I asked him how much was left, he went silent. That silence, that's when my heart broke for good. He didn't need to say it. I already knew. I could have screamed. I could have called the police, thrown him out, told the world what he did. But all I saw in front of me was a scared boy pretending to be a man. My boy. I remember sitting down, too tired to stand, and saying, "Malik, you could have asked me for anything in this world, and I would have given it to you, but not like this." He looked at me, then finally looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the little boy he used to be. The one who used to crawl into my lap and fall asleep while I hummed old songs. And then he walked away. Didn't say another word. The door closed behind him, and with it, the sound of everything I thought I still had. The house felt different after he left. Too big, too empty. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the ticking clock, The hum of the refrigerator felt louder than my own heartbeat. I'd sit by the window at night, the lamp casting a tired glow, waiting for footsteps that never came. The neighbors waved when they passed by, but I couldn't bring myself to wave back. How could I? I felt like the whole world could see right through me, see the fool I'd been. I'd raised him better. At least I thought I had. I taught him to pray before meals, to say thank you, to never lie. I told him that family was sacred, the one thing you never betray. But sitting there staring at that empty chair, I started to question everything. Did I love him too much? Did I make it too easy? Did I give him everything except the one thing he needed discipline? The truth hurt more than I wanted to admit. I hadn't just lost money. I'd lost trust. And trust, once broken, doesn't grow back like it used to. Days turned into weeks. The phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just silence, that heavy, suffocating kind of silence that seeps into your bones. Sometimes I'd hear his laughter in my dreams, that sweet, boyish laugh that once filled this house. I'd wake up smiling. Then the pain would hit all over again when I remembered it wasn't real. I stopped cooking big meals, stopped opening the curtains, stopped talking to anyone. Because what do you say when the person you love most becomes the one who hurts you the deepest? One night I found the old jar I used to keep coins in, the one labeled Malik's Future. It was dusty and empty now, but when I held it, I swear I could still feel the weight of every coin I'd ever dropped inside. And I cried not because of the money, but because of what it represented. Hope, faith, love, all gone in one bad decision. That night, I whispered into the dark, Lord, just keep him safe, even if I never see him again. Then I turned off the lamp, and for the first time in my life, I let the darkness stay. Time has a strange way of healing and hurting at the same time. The days didn't get easier, I just got quieter. The kind of quiet that comes when you stop fighting the pain and start living beside it. I went back to work at the church kitchen on Tuesdays. Not for the prayers or the sermons, but because chopping onions and stirring soup gave my hands something to do, while my heart learned how to breathe again. People would smile, ask how I was doing. I'd say, I'm fine. Those 2 words became my armor. Thin, fragile, but it kept the questions away. At home, I started cleaning. I scrubbed the floor until my knees ached. Washed curtains, sorted old clothes, threw away things that didn't hold meaning anymore. But I couldn't touch Malik's room. Not yet. His shoes were still by the bed. The old posters on the wall. The smell of his cologne lingered in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. Sometimes I'd stand in the doorway, half expecting him to come in and say, Grandma, I'm home. But the only voice I heard was the echo of my own breathing. One morning, I walked past the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were tired, but behind them, something small, something steady was starting to wake up. Strength. It wasn't loud or proud. It was quiet, humble strength, the kind that comes from surviving heartbreak and still getting out of bed the next morning. I started going outside again. Just small steps. The sun felt strange on my skin, like it was asking, where have you been all this time? And I'd whisper back, healing, I think. The world hadn't changed, but I had. I wasn't the same woman who counted pennies in a jar or dreamed of a perfect future. I was someone who had lost everything she built and was still standing. That realization didn't make the pain vanish, but it made me proud. Because even when Malik took everything, he didn't take me. It was a Thursday evening when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I'd grown used to the quiet by then. But something in me said, "Pick it up." The voice on the other end was shaky, nervous. "Mrs. Jackson, this is Officer Green. Are you Malik Jackson's grandmother?" My heart dropped. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. "Yes," I whispered. "What's happened?" He sighed. Said they'd picked Malik up downtown. Drugs. Fraud. Bad company. My knees gave out before I could reach the chair. I just sank to the floor, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to words I never wanted to hear. "Ma'am, he's not violent. Just lost." Lost. That word stuck in my chest like a thorn. Because I'd been watching him lose himself for years, and I couldn't stop it. The officer said I could visit him in the morning. When the call ended, I sat there in the dark, hands trembling, mind spinning through every memory of him. His first steps, his laughter, his graduation photo. And then the image shifted to the boy in handcuffs I hadn't seen yet, and I felt something break inside me that I didn't know was still whole. All night I wrestled with myself. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let him face the life he chose. But another part, the part that remembered holding him as a baby, couldn't let go. When the sun came up, I put on my old gray coat, the one I used to wear to his school events. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time, I saw not just a broken grandmother, but a woman who still had love left to give. Not blind love, not foolish love, but the kind that hurts and heals at the same time. I picked up my purse, locked the door behind me, and whispered, "Let's see what's left of my boy." I remember the smell first, cold metal, cheap soap, and that sharp, heavy scent of regret that clings to places like that. The officer led me down a long hallway. Each step echoed like a heartbeat I didn't want to feel. When we stopped at the glass window, I saw him. Malik, my baby, my boy. But he didn't look like my boy anymore. His face was thinner, his eyes tired, older, full of things I didn't recognize. He looked up at me, and for a second, I saw shame flash across his face. We picked up the phones, that cold plastic line between us. I didn't speak first. I just watched him, trying to remember the last time I'd held him in my arms. "Grandma," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." I felt my throat close up. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say. Every word I'd rehearsed the night before. Every question, every piece of anger. But none of them came out. Instead, I said quietly, "You hurt me, Malik." He nodded, didn't argue, didn't explain. Just let a tear fall down his cheek, and that broke me more than his crime ever could. He told me everything then. How he'd fallen in with the wrong crowd. How the easy money turned to trouble. How he thought he could fix it before I found out. And how, when it all went wrong, he didn't know how to face me. I listened, not as a victim, not as a savior. Just as a grandmother, trying to hold on to the little bit of love still left between us. When he finished, I said, "You made a choice, Malik. And choices have weight. But I still see the boy I raised in you. And that boy deserves a chance to do better." He cried, then really cried. Not the kind of crying people do to earn pity, but the kind that comes from somewhere deep, where pain and truth finally meet. When the guard said time was up, I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to. Before I stood up, I said softly, "I don't know when I'll stop hurting, but I know I don't hate you." And for the first time in a long time, I saw his eyes lift, and there, in all that mess, I saw a spark of who he used to be. As I walked out of that place, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness yet, but the beginning of it. Forgiveness isn't something that just happens. It's slow. It's messy. It's like trying to sew together a piece of fabric that's already been torn too many times. After that visit, I came home to the same quiet house. But something felt different. The silence didn't hurt as much as before. It was still there, but now it was softer. I started talking to him in my head, not the man behind bars, but the little boy I used to walk to school. I'd stand by the window at night and say, "You messed up, baby. But I still love you." Some nights, I'd cry. Other nights, I'd just sit in peace, remembering the way his small hand used to fit in mine. Those memories, they stopped feeling like knives. They started to feel like lessons. I went back to the kitchen at the church every week. This time I stayed longer. The people there didn't ask about Malik anymore. They just let me be. And sometimes that's the kindest thing someone can do, to let you be. One afternoon, the pastor-kind old man sat beside me while I peeled potatoes. He didn't preach, didn't quote scripture. He just said, "You can't carry both pain and peace in the same hand. Sooner or later, you gotta choose which one to hold." That night, I sat at my kitchen table, looked at that empty jar, Malik's future, and realized something. Maybe his future wasn't in the money. Maybe it was in the lessons both of us were learning the hard way. I picked up a coin from my purse, just 1 penny, and dropped it into that jar. The sound was small, but it filled the whole room. That was the moment forgiveness started. Not loud, not complete, just a quiet decision. I won't let bitterness be the last thing he gives me. Because love, real love, doesn't disappear when life gets ugly. It bends, it bruises, but somehow it survives. And maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Love that refuses to die. It started with a letter. No return address. Just my name written in the same crooked handwriting I used to help him practice when he was 10. I almost didn't open it. My hands shook as I tore the envelope. The paper smelled faintly of pencil and prison walls. "Grandma," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm trying." He wrote about the classes he was taking. Said he'd been reading again books about second chances, about rebuilding. Said there was an older man inside who'd been teaching him carpentry, and that for the first time in a long time, he felt good doing something honest. Every word felt like a stitch pulling at the tear in my heart. Painful, but somehow right. He ended it with, "I miss home. I miss your cooking. And I'm sorry for what I took, not just the money, but your trust." I pressed that letter against my chest, and for the first time in years, I smiled through my tears. After that, more letters came. Not often, once every few weeks. He'd tell me about the people he met, the lessons he was learning, the quiet he was finally listening to inside himself. Sometimes he'd draw small sketches of birds, hands, even a jar with coins inside. Said he kept one just like it in his cell, as a reminder of what he'd broken, and what he still wanted to rebuild. I started writing back. Short at first, a few lines, nothing too heavy. But with each letter, I felt the space between us shrinking, like a bridge slowly rebuilding itself across the ruins. "One day," he wrote, "Grandma, when I get out, I don't want to come back to who I was. I want to be the kind of man you can be proud of again." I sat there for a long time after reading that line. Then I picked up my pen and wrote the only thing my heart could say. "You already are, baby, because you're trying." And that was the day I realized forgiveness isn't something you give once. It's something you keep choosing every single day until the pain finally loosens its grip. The morning he got out, the sky was gray, the kind of gray that holds both rain and promise. I woke up before the sun, made coffee, then just sat at the table, hands wrapped around the mug to keep them from shaking. It had been 4 years. 4 years since that morning when everything fell apart. 4 years of silence, letters, and slow healing. The knock on the door came soft, hesitant, like he was afraid I wouldn't open it. For a second, I just stood there, my heart thumping so loud I could hear it in my ears. When I finally turned the handle, there he was. Malik. Older now. Wiser, maybe. His shoulders were broader, his face thinner. But his eyes, they were the same. The same brown eyes that used to light up when I baked his favorite pie. He didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. We just stood there, 2 people bound by love, pain, and time. Then he whispered, "Grandma." And I broke. All the anger, all the hurt. It just melted into tears. I pulled him into my arms, and for the first time in years, I held my boy again. He kept saying, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And I just kept shaking my head, because there weren't any words big enough for that moment. When we finally sat down, he told me about his plans. A job at a workshop, a small place that helped ex-convicts get back on their feet. He said he didn't want handouts, just a chance. I watched him as he spoke, the way he looked me in the eye, the way his hands stayed still, the way his voice carried both guilt and hope. And I realized, he wasn't the same boy who left. He was a man now. Broken, yes, but rebuilding. Before he went to bed that night, he placed something on the kitchen table. It was a small glass jar, clean, empty, with a label that said, "Grandma's Peace." He smiled a little and said, "I thought maybe we could start filling it again." I didn't say a word, just reached over, took a coin from my purse, and dropped it in. The sound, that soft, familiar clink, was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. It's been a year since Malik came home. A quiet, ordinary year. But to me, it feels like a lifetime. He works 6 days a week at that workshop now. Comes home tired, but with something I hadn't seen in him for so long. Peace. He fixes things. Tables, chairs, broken pieces of wood. Maybe because he understands now what it means to put something back together after you've been the one who broke it. Sometimes I sit by the window and watch him mow the lawn or paint the fence, and I think about how far we've both come, from silence and shame to something that almost feels like grace. We don't talk much about the past anymore. We don't need to. The apology has already been lived, not spoken. Every Sunday morning he puts a coin in that jar, Grandma's Peace. Sometimes it's a penny, sometimes $1. But it's not about the money. It's about what we're building now, Something small, steady, and real. I've learned something in all of this. Love doesn't disappear when people fail you. It bends, it bleeds, it weathers the storm. But if it's true, it finds its way back. Just like Malik did. Forgiveness didn't erase what he did. It just stopped it from owning me. And that, I think, is what freedom really means. I still have days when the memories hurt, when I see that jar and remember all the years I spent filling the first one. But now, when I drop a coin in, I don't think about what was lost. I think about what was found. Because in the end, this story was never about money. It was about love. About a woman learning that strength doesn't mean holding on. It means letting go, without losing your heart. And if I've learned anything at all, it's this. You can save every penny in the world, but the richest thing you'll ever have is the chance to forgive and be loved again. So I keep that jar by the window now. The sun hits it in the morning, and it sparkles like a quiet reminder that peace, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way home.